All right, we need to talk TRRs because some people are not using the OREC TRR form correctly, and you might be one of them. They did a new TRR form this year, and I want to make darn sure that you know exactly how to use them because there are definitely some people. I've talked to multiple people in the last few weeks where we're starting to now use these new forms, and people are experiencing some issues where not everybody is using them correctly. So let's go through these new OREC TRR negotiation forms so that you can use them absolutely correctly. And also a couple little tips at the end here to make sure that you're troubleshooting things to keep everybody on the same page. So here's what the new form looks like, right? Here's the deal. It is a 2-page form now, right? We've got 2 separate pages where before what we had in the old form was just a single page where the buyer would submit their TRR request. And then typically what you would see is people would, strike things out and change them. And then everybody would initial and we'd all do this back and forth on one form. Well, they changed it to this 2-page form where now the buyer submits their TRR request. And then on page 2, the seller submits their response. So let's look at exactly how this works. Page 1 here. The buyer is going to do all of their inspections, and at the end of their inspections, when they're ready to request repairs, if they're going to, they're going to start here. And either they could say, checkbox 1, there's no repairs that are needed. But if there are, then they're going to check box 2 here and say the following repairs are requested, right? That to be completed and paid for by the seller. You can check whether termites are required or not. And then let's do some examples here. Let's say the first thing is, fix the leaky toilet. This is not how I would generally write TRRs. I'm keeping this very simple just for this purpose. Repaint the back door and replace, I don't know, whatever, kitchen faucet. Cool. Again, not necessarily how I would write them, but just for argument's sake. Now, this is what would happen, right? So you get this and the buyer then signs it and they send this form, page 1, over to the seller. This is where things are getting confused because the question is, what does the seller do with page 2? We need to make sure we're doing it right because this is where disputes are going to happen if we aren't doing this correctly. If the seller just says, yes, I will do all of them, then great. They will check box 1 here to say, I accept all of them. I'm going to complete these repairs by closing. Easy enough. Seller signs it. Done deal. Let's assume the buyer wants, or the seller wants to change something. So they're going to check box 2 here that says the seller modifies your request as follows. So let's say we went back up and said they want to fix the leaky toilet, repaint the back door, replace the kitchen faucet. Let's say the seller says, great, I'll do 1 and 3, but I'm not going to do number 2. So the seller is going to put 2, remove, there's different ways you could do this. Let's just say remove item 2, seller will not repaint the back door. When you do it this way, let's go back and look because the question is, what are you supposed to do? There's a lot of people who are thinking that page 2 is, this is all the stuff that the seller will do. That's not correct. Page 2, you list in this box what the seller is going to modify. Let's look at paragraph 2 here. Again, it says, in response to the buyer's requested TRRs, the seller modifies the buyer's request. And then here, all other treatments, repairs, and replacements requested by the buyer shall be in force unless modified below. So the things that the buyer or the seller is going to fix that the buyer requested, you leave on page 1, you don't have to address on page 2. If the seller is going to remove something, then great, you modify that on page 2. If the seller is going to change something, so instead of replace the kitchen faucet, then you would put, item 3, seller to repair faucet, not replace. Again, how you word it is different, but this is how this is going to work. If I instead, here's what people are doing. Don't do this. If they said, great, seller to fix leaky toilet. You've repeated the thing that they want to do on number one, but you're supposed to be modifying. So you didn't really modify anything. And if you're thinking this means then we're not going to do number 2 and 3 because we didn't put them on page 2, that's wrong, because it says all other treatments, repairs, and replacements requested by buyer shall be in full force unless modified below. So since you didn't modify them here, these are in force. Okay. So let's real quick recap how we're supposed to be using this. Buyer submits, these are the things that we want repair to replace. Seller's going to say modify. If they say, fine, we'll do number 1, we'll fix the leaky toilet, leave it alone. 2, seller will not repaint back door. 3, what did I say that was? Replace kitchen faucet. Seller to repair kitchen faucet. So this is how we would want this to look. This means we're going to do number 1 because we didn't modify it here. So we'll repair the toilet. We've removed number 2, seller will not repaint the back door, and we've modified number 3. Then the seller signs it. Then it goes back to the buyer, and the buyer decides if they want to accept it or not. So again, the problem here is don't think that we're just going to take everything that we're going to do and put it into number 2. If you do that, you better be really careful about how you word this, because if you don't address it on page 2 and it was in the buyer's request on page 1, it means you're going to be repairing it down here. Okay. This is for modifications. So anything the seller is okay with doing, leave it alone on page 1. And just do modifies on the things that they want to modify. That's how these new TRR forms work. So make sure that you're negotiating the TRRs correctly, because if you're not doing it this way, then we have some potential disputes. My last tip is, if you're concerned, I would at least recommend having a verbal conversation with the other agent to make sure everybody is crystal clear as to what is going on. Have that informal discussion, professional to professional, and say, look, here's how we've completed the form. We want to make sure it's crystal clear. In this case, here's what we're intending, because this is what the form says. We're going to fix the leaky toilet. We're going to not do the back door, and we're going to repair rather than replace the faucet, right? And make sure they say, yep, that's exactly how we do it as well, because I've been talking to some people who not everybody's on the same page. Not everybody's being trained the same with how this works. But again, look at the language of it. The seller modifies the request, which we do here. All other treatments, repairs, and replacements requested by the buyer shall be in force unless it's modified below. So put all your changes down here, and if you leave it blank, then that means that they're accepting what's up above. So just go back through that, make sure you're crystal clear, work with the agent on the other side of the transaction, make sure everybody is crystal clear about how that works, okay? Listen, if you want to go deeper on things like this and you get questions about how this stuff works, the way that this came up is because we had one of our members of our Pro Access ask me about this because they were in this situation. Access is a membership that lets you ask questions to get answers from me as well as other community members. We've got about 100 agents and brokers in there now. They're also getting monthly live training that's exclusive. That's not just CE, but we do deep dives into stuff. In fact, we covered this very stuff on one of our recent Skill Builder live sessions on writing TRRs. So if you want to check that out, please head over to rproaccess.com. And if you found this video helpful, please share it with somebody who you think might needs it, but also go ahead and hit that like and subscribe down below to let me know that this was helpful. Appreciate you checking it out. Leave a comment if this was helpful. Let me know what you think.